let's get into the trade now.
I kind of wanted to do the same.
I've got quite a bit to talk about on this trade, and I'd rather just get it out of the way because honestly, I'm going to breeze by the New York Islanders in this grading.
Yeah. Oh, that's who we're talking about? I had no idea, Harp. You're so sly about it. Also, Case, before you jump in, I wanted to say to Harp, if we're rephrasing it because it's past the midway point of the season, I think I'm going to title these last two in-season grades rather than mid-season grades. That makes sense, right? You get behind that? Okay, perfect.
Sounds good. So, again, before we get into the trade, just to recap it, Bo Horvat from the Vancouver Canucks to the New York Islanders, 25% of his $5.5 million cap hit retained by Vancouver. In exchange for Anthony Beauvillier, 25-year-old forward. Atu Ratu, not Ratty, Ratu is the correct pronunciation there, and a conditional 2023 first-round draft pick. That's the trade, and let's get into that to start. Case?
Okay, so I kind of want to just get a quick gauge of what you guys think about this trade. Like, do you think they got enough?
Yeah, I personally, I think they got more than enough than I was expecting them to get is what I'm comparing it to.
I don't mind the return if there was, say, another pick in there, like a second or a third. I'd be feeling much better about the return.
Now, let me ask you this. Would you be okay with this return for Timo Meier?
No.
I would also say no because he's an RFA, so you have control. Despite the high QO, you still have control of the player.
Is a bit of an illusion with Timo Meier. I agree that they have control, so I factored that into when I was thinking about this trade. But control is an illusion when the qualifying offer is $10 million. So,
but not if you sign him for an 8-year term at like $8 million instead of 10.
Yeah, okay, but I'm also Timo Meier, and I'm not signing for less than $9.5 million. My qualifying offer is 10. You know. Anyways, let's get away from the control part because there's other stuff I want to bring up when you talk about is this enough for Timo Meier? Because I went back and I looked at Bo Horvat's last 6 seasons and Timo Meier's last 6 seasons. So Bo Horvat was 26th in the league for the last 6 seasons. He was 26th in the league. He had 152 goals. That's a 33 goals season or pace per season average. I'm really butchering this already. Timo Meier had 148, so 29th in the league. So he had less. Meier had, I think, 2 more points in total than Bo Horvat. When you looked at where Vancouver landed in goal position in the standings, they were 26th, 25th, 10th, 24th, 18th. Terrible, right? San Jose, 13th, 3rd, 28th, 25th, 30, 18th. Kind of comparable later on there. When you look at percentage of team goals, Bo Horvat averaged 12.8%. Meier averaged 10.79%. So Horvat gets the lean there. So Horvat, more goals, better goal pace, more of the team percentage share. And then I started kind of looking at them as both guys that I would think of as responsible players. They're both pretty good defensively and responsible with the puck. Timo Meier definitely way more physical. That's by a long shot. I think his hits are like 700 and something compared to Bo's 300 and something. Powerful. But man, is Bo way more responsible with the puck. That's like giveaways, D-zone giveaways, everything. Timo has I think double the giveaways in the last 6 seasons or something like that compared to Bo Horvat. Then the other thing I looked at was shooting percentage, because I knew that that's usually where this conversation goes when you talk about two players scoring on a similar pace. Timo has a lower shot percentage, but it's because he takes astronomically more shots. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking about shots and giveaways, and in my mind, when you're missing the net or shooting into shin pads, that's a giveaway, even though it doesn't get written down as a giveaway. So last year, Timo missed the net or had a shot blocked 247 times compared to Bo's 109. Bo is like far more responsible with the puck. He's just as good as in his own end off the puck as Timo Meier, and scores more goals and had 2 less points. So Bo Horvat, as a center, 1 year older, 58% on the faceoff, 55% in the last 6 seasons. Why does he not command as much as Timo Meier other than control?
Couple things that I wanted to mention on that. Don't know if I'll exactly answer the question, but when comparing the two players, obviously you look at the position, and that's the one reason why I think Bo Horvat is more valuable to certain teams than a guy like Timo Meier. But if we look at their next contracts, like what they're going to sign on their next deal, I think it'll be awfully comparable. And like, I don't think one player is stand out better than the other, because I think they bring different things to the table. Like you mentioned, Horvat is better at controlling the puck offensively and defensively. He doesn't give it up as much. He's more defensively responsible, whatever. I think that's not crazy to say. I think that's pretty well known. But then when you bring out the numbers, it just makes it clearer. But then Timo Meier brings that different element that Horvat doesn't have, which is the competitiveness on the puck, which includes his physicality in terms of hitting. Like, he is the prototype power forward now in the NHL, and there aren't many of them left. So that in and of itself is kind of a hot commodity around the league. And when that type of player is available, I think there's going to be a higher bidding war than maybe there will be for a guy like Bo Horvat. So I think they're very comparable. I think that for sure. That argument can be made, but the one sort of way I would argue against that is when you go to hitting percentage, kind of hits for and hits taken in the league, and you go percentage for, you're always going to see the worst teams in the league at the top. And that's because when you have the puck, you're not hitting. And that's the thing I would say about Bo Horvat versus Meier, is you have the puck more when Bo Horvat's on the ice. Definitely. Something else I'll say too is that, yes, Timo is a volume shooter, but I think some of the best goal scorers in the league are volume shooters, because that's just how they operate. Another guy who is notorious for this and just doesn't go in as much as a guy like it does for Meier is Brady Tkachuk. He's a notorious volume shooter. His expected goals are always through the roof, but his actual goals are always well below expected. So I would assume that it's a similar case with Timo Meier, just to a lesser extent. What I will say about the two players as well is that Timo, and this may be a reason why I think he may be a little more valuable than Horvat in terms of his offensive production right now, is that over the last couple seasons, Timo has kind of proved that he's that point per game player. He's dynamic offensively, and it kind of doesn't really matter who he's playing with on poor San Jose teams. But then when you look at Horvat, this year we've seen him explode offensively to a point where we haven't seen it before. So although the averages kind of equal out to be the same, this year has
that's
been
why I brought up the
outlier.
Team goals and team percentages, because Vancouver 25th in the league for team goals in 2018-2019. Bo Horvat 12.33% of those goals. At that time, Timo Meier, for example, San Jose 3rd in the league, percentage of goals 1%. What I'm saying is Bo Horvat has never really had any support, and he's had a 33 goal pace his last 6 seasons. Definitely 52 this year is dragging that up a bit, but I think if you take the 52 out, his pace is 29 goals in the 5 season span. So Bo Horvat scores and doesn't have support. And when you talk about Timo Meier and shot volume, I agree with you that the best goal scorers shoot the most. Ovechkin, key number 1 there.
Yep.
But the thing about Timo Meier is his percentage of shots that miss the net and hit shin pads, because that doesn't help at all. If you look at, obviously Meier has way more shots on goal than Bo Horvat, which does help. But man, he misses a lot. I'm not arguing because I think Timo Meier is not a good player. I'm really hoping he gets traded to the Devils. I'm just saying.
I was going to say, I thought you were.
If you pooled 100 people, like the majority of them would say that this is a good enough return for Bo Horvat, and I bet you the majority of them would disagree that it's a good enough return for Timo Meier, and I don't think that's fair. I think they're very, very equal in value.
That, I think, is a good point. I think they're very equal in value. I do agree with you on that point in terms of their production and sort of everything they bring to the table, everything in. But I still think in a cap world, certainty and control trumps all. And having that player as an RFA is more important than perhaps letting the guy walk. Or, it's more important to have control over the player than getting a guy like Bo Horvat who could walk in the offseason. And to be honest, most likely will, because I think he'll get overpaid somewhere, not in Long Island, because Lou doesn't like to overpay stars. I
would say that before the trade, there's an 80% chance of Bo Horvat signing with whatever team he gets traded to. And there's a 50% chance he re-signs with the Islanders because Lou Lamoriello is an absolute wild card, which I just wanted to say, it's funny that this trade was done by the GM who traded the pick that Bo Horvat was picked with.
Yeah.
So it's kind of come full circle here. Lou Lamoriello traded this pick, Bo Horvat's pick, for Corey Schneider. And now he's traded for Bo Horvat. So it's like, I guess he got his pick back, but...
and Corey Schneider is also in the organization still. So it's kind of funny that he got both back,
Yeah, he's in Bridgeport. That's hilarious.
I don't see Lou, though, signing Horvat long-term because he's going to command like $8 to $10 million a year on a 7-year deal, right? So,
but I would say that he deserves, when you look at Timo Meier, Bo Horvat, they both deserve $8.5 to $9 million or more. So,
I agree, but I'm saying Lou Lamoriello doesn't exactly have a history.
I'm agreeing with you there. That's why I said 50-50 now that he's on the Islanders, because he fucking knows what Lou's going to do with that.
Like, he'll pay Matt Martin, Casey Cizikas, and whoever else $4 million to play on the fourth line. But, Barzal, I would say, is the only star player that he's ever signed to a massive deal, at least in recent memory. You've got a lot of J.G. Pageaus and Anders Lees and Anthony Beauvilliers who make kind of mid-range money, but the way that he structures his teams, and this was a point of contention for him in Toronto, like 100%, the way he structures his teams, he doesn't do it the top-heavy way. So I'll be interested to see if he does re-sign Horvat, but if I'm a betting man, I'm betting against it for sure.
Yeah, I think the next contract we're looking at for Horvat is probably 8 times 8, and then looking at Meier, his QO is $10 million, but that doesn't mean he's going to make $10 million a year on a long-term deal. I would think it's around 8.5. I was listening to Elliot Friedman talk about this today, and he did say a couple of interesting things. That one, if the Islanders need to create space, that a casualty might be Pageau, who makes $5 million, and he could go somewhere like a team like Carolina, for example, where he could just play the same way there, and just the Islanders would be able to shed some money off the books. And also, Horvat is represented by Newport Sports, and a lot of Islanders guys are also represented by Newport. So there are a lot of connections there, and there's a lot of familiarity. So you got to think that they're trying to work on something. But with the way the Islanders play, like, it's very possible that Horvat just doesn't end up lighting it up there. They miss the playoffs, things go sideways, and then he signs somewhere else in the summer. I could see that as well.
If that happens, I'm going to be devastated because I have him in fantasy, and he's been one of the best players in fantasy all year long. Like, I think he's ranked in the top 10 currently. So if that were to happen, and if his production falls off, like, I'm going to cry because he's been carrying my team. But while we're still on the trade here, and I know we have a whole episode to do, but I mean, honestly, we can kind of speed run it because this trade talk is so much fun. I wanted to read on air what I said to you guys in the chat, kind of knee-jerk reaction to the trade, and then maybe just chat about what we think the return was quick and how adequate that was. But okay, so this is what I said. Honestly, I think the fact that they had zero leverage in the trade at Vancouver, I think they did well. They weren't going to sign Horvat, and in my opinion, I think, you might as well get something. Plus, if he doesn't sign in New York, the Isles are going to regret having to give away so much. And like we just talked about for 5 minutes, like, we have no idea if he's going to sign in New York. And if I'm betting on it, I'm betting that he doesn't. New York sucks now. They have no prospects in the system. They have no picks coming. This is the 4th straight year where they're not going to have a first-round pick. Since Lou Lamoriello came to the team in 2018, he's participated in 5 drafts. He's led the most recent 4 drafts and will obviously lead the upcoming draft as well. Only 2 players have played more than 5 games in the NHL. Atu Ratu was one of them. He's played 12. So now they basically have nothing to show for all of those drafts. I know they're pretty recent, but that's dating back to the 2019 draft, and again, nothing to show for it. I did say this, though. I said the only thing is that Vancouver probably could have waited and got more from a team who had a deal in place with Horvat, which is something that we talked about, right? Like, if you have the time, why not wait and try to get a better deal? That would have driven up the price of the return. But like I said to you guys in the chat, that's easier said than done. And just to summarize, a mid-round pick, middle 6 player, and a B-plus prospect isn't bad for a guy having an outlier career year who you don't have money to sign anyways, and like had zero leverage in the transaction in the first place. So given the situation that Vancouver was in, and you guys know that I hate on Vancouver management all the time. They've had a terrible, abysmal year, and frankly record over the last 6 years or so. But given the situation that they're in, not bad on Vancouver's part, in my opinion, but creating that situation in the first place, very bad on Vancouver's part.
I disagree. I agree with most of the things you said about the Islanders, but to me that makes this trade a lose-lose and nothing but that. I would say that Vancouver definitely did have leverage in this situation because they had the hottest trade piece in the league available other than Timo Meier, but the control thing's a different story. So they have the hottest rental in the league. And when you look at what teams are willing to give up for a 4th defenseman, i.e. Sherratt, for example.
Gavrikov this year.
And then now you look at your captain center who is having a career year. It's an outlier because it is so fantastic, but his career has been very solid. Otherwise, like, you cannot bash this guy's career and say that this is just an outlier season. Like, he's playing his ass off for the money right now, and I don't expect him, I expect him to score 35 goals again next year, but maybe not if he's on the Islanders. But when I look at the return, I just don't think it's enough. I think that Vancouver should have waited longer until they got something more. And then when you talk about the Islanders, they've given up their future for what I think is just probably not enough for this team to make the playoffs in such a good East Conference and incredible Metro Division. So I just don't get why they would give up such future pieces for a guy that they have on this team. You're adding another responsible forward with leadership capabilities to a group full of that. The one difference is he can score. So I don't think it's enough for the Islanders. I don't think that Vancouver got enough given who he is. So in my opinion, it's lose-lose both ways.
Yeah, just going back to the leverage point, if you're a team negotiating with Patrick Allvin, aren't you just saying, like, listen, I know that you don't have the money to sign the player. I know that the player expects to be leaving at the end of the season, and I know that you're kind of running out of options because you're not going to just keep the player for nothing. You want to get something for it.
That exact thing can be said about every rental that has ever happened in the NHL ever. That's the same situation for every rental, and we always expect them to get a huge chunk at the trade deadline because it's the biggest piece. Like, there's 3 names that get spit around leading up to this trade deadline so far, and they've been happening since the off season, because we all know that, you know, San Jose is probably not going to hold on to Meier, and Bo Horvat, they don't have the money for him. They've picked JT Miller and Kuzmenko. So we know these guys are expected to get traded. So we expect a high piece because it's a tough market out there. Everyone needs something and everyone's trying to get a push. Well, like they have to get rid of the players, so they're getting less. I don't think that's fair, because that's every season with rentals.
Yeah, I'm just saying if that, like, that's my bargaining stance. If I'm the team coming in trying to get the player, I'm saying, like,
I
look,
would be
you don't
talking
have any
to the next team then.
Well, I think
sure there was tons of them.
I think that's what every team is going to say. And, like, listen, you want Bo Horvat, and I'm sure there was a bidding war to an extent, and maybe they could have gotten more if they waited. I'm just saying I think that they had less leverage than you would expect a team to have who has the hottest commodity on the market, because the situation in Vancouver has been so public and terrible over the last year.
I would just want more of a for sure thing than a third line, like, undersized winger with decent skill and a prospect that we have no friggin' clue what's going to happen with this guy. Like, that's the thing. The best piece in this is the first round pick, because it's a deep draft. But I would like a little more certainty in both the players that I get back, like, potential wise. Whereas I don't have near as much faith in Ratu as, well, Chad definitely, but most people. Like, he had a good finish season.
And World Juniors.
How many times have we seen that and it doesn't translate? So I don't know. I'm not happy for any team involved, and I'm certainly not happy because he's in the Metro Division now.
I was going to say that's the one reason why I am pretty happy, is because he didn't go to the Atlantic. I thought for sure that Boston or Tampa, I mean, probably not Tampa for Horvat, but I thought that Boston would be able to get him, or someone, and then that would mean trouble for the Leafs. But so that's a win in and of itself, I think.
I'll quickly give my 2 cents on the return for both sides, and then we'll move on to our first team that we're going to grade here in the Metro. I'm kind of leaning more towards your side, Case. Sort of a lose-lose. Like, there's risk on both sides. I mean, there's no question about it. I think the first-round pick is good. Like, to me, I look at the return that the Sabres got for Jack Eichel. I know that's different, but I really would have liked to see a fourth piece in the return for the Vancouver Canucks. Like I said, another pick, a second or a third. I would have felt better about the return. But really, on the Vancouver side, you could look at it this way. You get 2 reclamation projects and a first-round pick, right? Like, 25-year-old Anthony Beauvillier, maybe he gets back to more offense and just, where he can just go out there and play freely under a new system with the Vancouver Canucks, because, we know how the Islanders play. Ratu is kind of a wild card. It's been a rough journey for him, but could be one of those high-risk, high-reward kind of things, like, very similar to Brad Lambert getting picked 30th by the Winnipeg Jets, who's also a Finn, funny enough. And then for the Islanders, just the risk of it not working out, not having success, Horvat not quite fitting in around Matt Barzal and the other big players that they have in their forward group, and not re-signing. So it could very well be a lose-lose. There's high risk on both sides, I think, but not a bad return for Vancouver, just going back to that, but would have liked to see a fourth piece in there, whether it's another draft pick or a young player, whatever.
What do you think the odds are of New York realizing that they're going to miss the playoffs and flipping him again at the deadline for slightly fewer assets?
I actually heard that on Jeff Merrick's show today, and heard that exact thing that you just brought up and laughed about it. Wouldn't that be something? Oh my goodness. And the other thing too, like, I don't want that to happen to Bo Horvat. I like him. He's been through a lot. He deserves better. I mean, you heard him talk. He thought he was going to be a Vancouver Canuck for the rest of his career in the summer. and that's just not how it worked out. So I really hope that doesn't happen, but hey, you never know. I mean, the Islanders aren't exactly in the best spot right now, and this is kind of a Hail Mary.
Before the trade occurred, Money Puck had them with a 14% chance to make the playoffs. And last I checked, it's about 19% after the trade. So, like, what the hell? It could be a possibility of flipping him again. I'm just saying.
Oh, that would be wild. All right, boys. Well, good discussion on the big trade that went down, and of course the trade deadline is coming up on March 3rd, and so we're a little over a month away from that, which is really exciting.